Thanks very much, Emer, for the introduction. I'm delighted to bring you today through an overview of our agriculture and environment sector chapter in the report. I'd like to first up acknowledge my co-authors. This was a big piece of work. Anne-Marie Ryan, David Stiles and Bernard Hyde, and with much gratitude to many reviewers. Many of you, like Mary Frances said, are in the room today. There was a considerable effort made in reviewing the report, and I think it's really strengthened it as a result. So thank you all very much for your contributions. Okay, so I'm going to just give you an outline, as I said, of the chapter and the key messages. I'm going to wrap up at the end with the key messages that are in it. But this is what I'm going to take you through. Just an overview, firstly, of the agricultural sector and its importance to Irish society and economy. The challenges that we face with the food system. I'm going to delve a little bit deeper into those challenges that are to do with the environment, and I'll have a little bit on each of the main environmental challenges. Then a brief summary of the plans and programs in place, and as we heard from Andy earlier on today, there are lots of those. And then I'm going to ask the question, will they deliver? And finally then I'll wrap up with the key messages. Okay, so farming in Ireland, this won't be a surprise to many of you. There are 135,000 farms of average size 33 hectares. As Andy mentioned earlier, agriculture is our predominant land use across the country. It really takes up the vast proportion of our land. We have 4.5 million hectares under agriculture, and most of that, as you can see on the chart there, is grassland. If you delve into the different types of farming that goes on, we're mostly just over half specialist beef production. Then we have sheep, dairy, mixed crops, and tillage, which would be a fairly small proportion there in the purple. So overall, we're a very animal-dominated agriculture sector, and it's contributing a huge amount to our national economy. We've got 18.8 billion in exports there to over 180 countries in 2022. And of that, the food and drink exports are around 38% based on the 2020 figures. Over 170,000 jobs are engaged in agriculture. So like Mary Frances said, this is really about our people at the end of the day, which equates to about 7% of our employment. So farming really is an integral part of our society. And many of us, most of us, would have some connection to the land at some point in our family history. But we do have a lot of challenges with the food system, not just environmental challenges. We have environmental impacts, as we've heard earlier, in air, water, climate and biodiversity, for example, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about those in the next few slides. We've heard from Mary Frances about climate change and the need for adaptation. There's no doubt that all of these extreme events, both wet and dry, are starting to bite in terms of their impact on how we do agriculture in Ireland. So adaptation and working in harmony and being prepared for those kind of events in the future is going to need to take more prominence than perhaps we have to date. Farm viability is a real issue in rural communities. The economics of farming today, outside of the dairy and the tillage sectors, is really challenging. And there are succession issues. The average age of our farmers today is late 50s at the moment. So the succession planning and making a viable industry for the younger farmers coming through is a real challenge. Technology and innovation is where we're going to take the next leap. And there are new technologies coming online all the time. And we need to see a greater uptake of those. Food waste is a major challenge, not just in Ireland, but globally. A quarter of all food produced globally is wasted. So that's a huge area for improvement. And as we've heard earlier, we have many competing demands for our lands to achieve all of the different goals that we need to achieve. And we need a vision on how our objectives for agriculture, for forestry, for climate, for urban areas, how they all fit together in the limited pool of land that we've got. And we have challenges with scale. We have, as I said, 135,000 farmers. We have one or many climate plans, actions, strategies. And it's about trying to make those national messages and national objectives relevant to an individual farmer in the land where they live, work and play. We've had a number of successive food policies, starting with food harvest, moving into Foodwise 2025, and now we're in the food vision. And so far to date, we haven't seen the level of sustainability across the three pillars of sustainability. So that's economic, environment and social that we need to see. The latest policy, the food vision, has achieved a better balance across those three, but now it's really about implementing and getting going on achieving those goals. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about the environmental impacts on each of the main thematic areas. Firstly, climate. 38% of our greenhouse gases do come from agriculture, and you can see in the chart there the different contributions from the different sectors. The key drivers really are the cattle numbers and the extent of nitrogen fertiliser use that we have in the country. It's important to say up front we have seen significant reductions in chemical nitrogen use over the last number of years, from a peak of 407,000 tonnes in 2018 down to about 280,000 tonnes now of last year. So there have been significant reductions achieved, which is really positive. The sector has a 25% reduction target in emissions by 2030, but our projections are that we have measures on the table currently to achieve about an 18% reduction, assuming all of the measures are implemented, and we need additional policy levers to get that final mile to the 25%. So we're not on track, in summary. In relation to biodiversity then, we have 85% of our protected habitats and 43% of species are in unfavourable condition. The bird species are in decline, particularly the farmland birds and the breeding waders. The issue there is loss of habitat, particularly the wetlands habitat and our species-rich grasslands. Pollution and drainage are key issues. A healthy biodiversity, though, as we've heard earlier on, provides lots of ecosystem services. And just to mention a few, the pollinators, for example, and nutrient attenuation in healthy soils is really important. So it's really important that we look after biodiversity. Biodiversity will look after us. We are in trouble with the courts for not achieving our targets. And a recently published prioritised action framework published by the National Parks and Wildlife has highlighted that measures to achieve the goals in the protected areas are going to cost of the order of 1.14 billion over the 6-year period to 2027. So this isn't a small task. In terms of water then, we have 43% of our water bodies are not meeting their water quality targets. Agriculture is the biggest issue, which in many ways is no surprise given that agriculture is the biggest land use. But all the same, we have 1,000 water bodies that are impacted by agriculture. The key problems are excess loss of nutrients and chemical fertilisers from organic and chemical fertilisers. And while we are seeing improvements in some areas, they are being offset by declines. So we need to really get down and target our effort. And the map, this is the same map that Andy showed earlier on. We've been able to pull together our science and evidence now to actually focus in the actions on the particular water quality issues that need addressing. So we have lots of science and evidence now. We're in our 5th nitrates action programme, which is designed to address these nutrient issues, and we haven't yet delivered the targets that we need. And more action needs to be taken. It's this implementation and upping the scale of pace that we've talked about earlier on today. We also have the issues with loss of habitat condition and chemicals in the water, but they are not as critical at the moment as the nutrients issue. Moving on to air, 99% of our national ammonia emissions are from agriculture. The sources, again, are animal, organic fertilisers and non-organic or chemical nitrogen fertilisers. We're, again, not on track. So not on track is a common message across all of these environmental realms. We're not on track to meet our international commitments. We have infringement cases underway. And again, a bit like the greenhouse gases, we could meet our targets. There's a pathway there based on the work that Teagasc have done, but we do need additional policy levers to actually get us there. The key actions here are, again, chemical fertiliser reduction, use of protected urea and low emission slurry spreading, which is increasing, but again, it's upping the scale and pace. So plans and programs that are in place, there are lots, and Andy threw up a list of them earlier on. We have seen a real drive in the last few years through the European Green Deal to really bring forward, I suppose the key strategy under the Green Deal would be the farm to fork strategy. There's the zero pollution plans, there's the biodiversity strategy. There are lots of different strategies, plans and programs in place. And I guess across them all, there are a number of common themes that jump out. It's about reducing chemical and nutrient pollution initially. It's about implementation. And these are common messages that you're going to hear throughout the day. And there are barriers to implementation. There are a lot of concerns within the sector about the implications of those changes on the sector, and those need to be heard. We need to support our farmers. So that's, again, common themes. The budget for agricultural policy delivery, the CAP, is quite large, needless to say. It's 9.8 billion over 5 years, almost 2.3 billion of that, which is for rural development and agri-environment schemes. So there's a lot of money in the pot, and it's really critical that we use it wisely and in a targeted way. That said, Ireland is a leader in results-based payments approaches to agri-environment schemes. We've been able to show the way across Europe in the development of these schemes, and they are a real positive way of achieving outcomes and working with communities to achieve those outcomes in a tangible way. So will they deliver is the big question. We have all these plans and programs, we have targets, we know what has to be done. And the first point is in bold. I think it's really important to be upfront that we are making significant progress. We have seen a big change in the collective understanding and the mobilisation and the momentum over the last number of years. We are not currently on track though, and again, a common theme throughout the day. We also don't have evidence that the current measures are enough. We know broadly what has to be done to achieve our 2030 targets and to get us on the road. We know we need to reduce nutrient pollution. We know we need to be more sustainable, but we need a step up in implementation, and we also need a vision for what does that look like out to 2050. What does a sustainable Ireland look like, where we have all of our competing needs and we're delivering all of our ecosystem services in a balanced way, and we have enough forestry, we have enough land for urban, we have enough land to be farmed, and we're doing it all in a sustainable way. We need our actions to be quantifiable and recorded and tracked and evaluated. We need to get better at the transparency and about asking ourselves the hard questions about, are all these plans and programs delivering? What is actually being achieved in terms of the environmental outcomes? And that means looking backwards about what has been achieved, and it means looking forwards about what do we need to do to achieve what we need to achieve. And it needs to be a whole of sector, collaborative, integrated approach. And this policy integration and coherence message that's come through in one of the top 5 messages in the SOER is really resonated here in the agriculture space. We need to be seeing this environmental policy in place and having a much better go at integrating the policy across the different sectors. It's a challenge. So farming for the future, what does it look like? Well, we need firstly a long-term vision for landscape and for our landscape management and for our food system, because they are integrated and there are a lot of connections between them. And we need them to deliver quite a large breadth of ecosystem services. And there are choices and trade-offs that need to be made, and it needs to be done collaboratively. We then need to be setting clear trajectories. We've talked about trajectories earlier today as well, that reflect the scale and pace that's needed. This incremental change, which we're good at, and we are seeing improvements, like, for example, the reduction in chemical use. They're really positive, but are they actually going to get us to where we need to be? And if not, then what does that look like? And we need to be tracking progress and evaluating and looking back and critically appraising how we're going out to 2050. We also need to be adapting our farming system to farm more in harmony with nature. There's a lot of focus now on regenerative agriculture, which is really positive. The organic farming interest has really grown in the last number of years. And we need to really be looking to farm within the safe limits of healthy and functioning ecosystems for our soils, our water and our air. And we need to be looking to build resilience and support the building of resilience to adapt to the climate change impacts. And that can be things like, for example, mixed species swards that are more drought tolerant, but it's looking forward to what climate change impacts are going to bring and then adapting our farming systems to cope with that. There are lots of opportunities in the circular bioeconomy. Warren will talk about those later on. Reducing food waste is really key. And there needs to be a lot more focus on that in the coming years. And the last point, again, just to reiterate, we do need to be supporting our landholders to make these changes. They're not easy changes to make, many of them, and farmers need to be getting a fair return for that investment, and there needs to be a just transition. So the key messages that we arrived at, our co-authors, all the co-authors sat together and we arrived at these key messages based on all the evidence that we'd pulled together. Agriculture is an integral part of the Irish society, the fabric of the Irish society. It's a key role in delivering, and it depends on a healthy environment. So they're intrinsically linked. Healthy farming, healthy environment, healthy farming. But our food systems are not currently meeting our sustainability targets, and we do need the urgent transformational change. That's the first key message. The second key message is about the plans and programs and the implementation. We're seeing lots of positive actions being implemented, but we don't really have clear evidence that what we're doing is enough and that they will collectively achieve the scale of the environmental outcome we need. And the last message is around the shared vision out to 2050. For land use and the food system, it needs to be integrated, it needs to be developed in a collaborative way, it needs to be linked to the environmental policy that we're calling for, and we need to have a clear pathway within that for the agriculture and the land use sector and adequate supports to achieve it. And then we must get a drive on with implementation and collect the evidence base as we're going for the adaptive management approaches. How are we going? Are we getting to where we need to be? And if not, how do we need to change it? Thank you very much.